Spiders, technically they're not an insect, but you know what? I would put them in the insect category because I don't like them either, all right? There's just something about a creepy little spider. Earwigs. Have I ever told you guys my earwig stories? They rate right up there with spiders. I agree totally with you. Why is it all the girls are admitting they're afraid of bugs and the guys just aren't putting their hands up yet? Martha. Centipedes. You hate centipedes?
I do.
They got so many legs, eh?
That earwig thing with the garden hose thing, it's almost looking good. Give us that shrill scream.
Greg's got his hand up.
I do.
You do. You're turning the camera on, but nonetheless.
Sorry.
Oh. What is your least favorite insect? Come on, you got to have one, Sharon. Mosquitoes. The male mosquitoes or the female mosquitoes? It's the females are the ones that bite. The males don't bite. And they're a lot bigger. It's a good thing they don't bite. They'd suck you dry if one of those was grabbed the hold of you. Brother Wayne.
All the others you said I don't like, but I really detest flies.
Flies? Come on, Mrs. Taylor, tell us your least favorite insect. June bugs. June bugs. Black flies. They're not very big, but they're basically 90% mouth, those black flies. Yeah, all right. Linda. Cockroaches. Ooh, I could tell you a good cockroach story too. We went to the Bahamas, and I walked in the bathroom, and I found a cockroach in there. And I'll kill this thing. I'm not saying anything to Lenore, all right? Well, I didn't think we saw any that night. And then the next night, we were there for like 2 nights or 3 nights. I can't remember. But then she saw one in the bathtub, and she started screeching. So I went and killed that thing, and then I went downstairs, and I asked the people, if you got something to kill some cockroaches in a room, and they gave me this spray stuff, and I'm reading it. It says, spray along all your baseboards. Well, let me tell you. I sprayed along the baseboards, and the room came alive. There was cockroaches everywhere. Really exciting, wasn't it, hon? It was our last night there. She never slept a wink. Sleeping like this and alternate eyes. All right, one more. Least favorite insect. Anyone?
Mine was the same as Sharon's. Mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes? All right. What is your favorite insect? Does anybody have one that they like? Brother Ian?
Maybe one of those that are dead.
Dead insects. All right. All right. Laura? Honeybees. They're so cute and cuddly. Aaron told me this. I've yet to try it, and I'm still thinking he might be setting me up. But he says you can actually pat a bumblebee, and they like being petted. Aaron would know that. I haven't tried it. I'm not going to try it. I'll watch Aaron pet a bee, and I'm still not going to pet one, all right? But that was a bumblebee. You don't want to pet a honeybee. Honeybees you can pet?
Honeybee won't sting you.
Well, there you go.
Well, it's threatened, but you can have them crawl on you, you can touch them and everything, they won't bother you. A honeybee won't. Because they
I'd be happy to watch you do that as well.
honeybee will sting you and it dies.
I know they will. They don't really want to do it, and I don't really want them to do it either. But they still might do it, so I'm going to leave the rascal alone. All right, favorite insect?
I like praying mantises because they eat all the bad bugs in the garden.
Praying mantis. Okay. And it's not praying, although their hands are kind of look like they're praying. They are a vicious bug. They are a vicious bug. A spider? Oh, a stick bug. Okay. Yeah, the walking sticks that look like a piece of wood, except they got legs. They're an interesting looking little critter. I don't think they can bite you, can they? They don't have a very good bite, but they got a great bark. Glad you guys got that one. That was a good one. I just made that one up, by the way. But anyway, you know, some people have, and I can't for the life of me figure out this why, all right? They have pet spiders. And we're not just talking, a daddy long legs. They'll have like a pet tarantula. And they'll let this thing walk all over them. And I'm thinking, you're crazy, all right? But some people have pet ant farms. Do you ever know anybody with an ant farm? And they'll have it, and it's like a little thin aquarium type of thing, and you can watch them because they're an amazing creature. Ants are an amazing creature. And Solomon instructs some people to consider the ants. Do you remember what people he tells to consider the ants? Does anybody remember who they are? Lazy people. He tells the lazy people because they don't have to go far and they could just sit there and watch the ants maybe. I don't know. He tells these lazy people to consider the ants, all right? My dad used to have a lot of different lines that he would use, and really I could have made a book of all the different cool little lines that he had, but my all-time favorite one was this. And he'd say, that guy is too lazy to shiver when he's cold. That's lazy, all right? That's lazy, Now we went through Proverbs chapter 5, 6, and 7 as they talked about morality and specifically in adultery, but really it played to all of those. And I had to skip over some passages in chapter 6. So we're going to go back there to chapter 6 because we're all done with what we were looking at for the past 3 weeks here. But let's take a look at Proverbs chapter 6 and starting in verse number 6. All right. It says, "Go to the ant, thou sluggard, and consider her ways, and be wise, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep, so shall thy poverty come as one that traveleth, and thy want as an armed man." That's Proverbs 6, verses 6 down to verse 11. Ants, I did a little bit of reading on ants, and there's basically, there's like 10,000 species of ants, all right? So skipping that out, they basically come in, there's a queen ant, kind of like a queen bee, all right? And there are worker ants, and there are soldier ants. And the queen ant is basically an egg-laying machine, all right? But the worker ants come to the queen, and I don't know how this works exactly, but they talk to the queen, not quite like in A Bug's Life, all right? And that's the show. If you got little kids, you maybe watch The Bug's Life. But they tell her what kind of ants we need. We're running low on worker ants, or we need some more soldier ants, or you know what? You're looking a little gray around the gills there, so we need a couple more queen ants to come along. And then she will lay the appropriate eggs, and then the workers take care of these things, and they keep the colony in balance that way. And they, like it says here, having no guide, overseer, or ruler in verse number 7 there, it's a cooperative work, okay? Now, the communists thought that they could make people that way. People aren't ants, all right? And it doesn't work that way. And that's not what Solomon is saying. This is how your government ought to be. Everybody. That's not what Solomon is saying. He's telling the sluggard, and he's giving an illustration, which is very important too. I'm just going to go off on a segue here. But when Jesus would make a parable, he's trying to illustrate a specific point. All right, one specific point. It's not like you can take like one of these parables or something like that and guide your whole life with all different aspects. That's not how it's going here. Same with Solomon here. He's not saying we ought to be like ants, in everything that we do. He's saying you ought to be like ants as far as your work ethic is concerned, okay? And that's where he's focused here, all right? At the work ethic. They all need to work together for the betterment of the colony. We had, last year we had some ants. We found them at our cottage. And we could see that, and I did a little bit of reading there because I'm happy to share the cottage with my grandkids and my wife, but I really don't want to share it with a whole bunch of ants. So I was trying to figure out how to get rid of these ants, and the one thing that I read was, you put down an ant trap, you're not getting rid of all your ants. You might get rid of one colony, but there could be several colonies around. You have to find out where they all are, all right? And he could see these things working together. There was one outside, and they were marching in a row up the downspout and into the attic. And they were just in a line. And it's like, you know, if dad is walking through the snow and a little kid's coming behind him, where's he going to step? He's going to try to step in those same footprints, right? So that he's not getting, and that's what it looked like these ants were doing. It's like they were stepping on the same things as they were going. I mean, we got these special traps and put them all down there and came back the next week and we had no more ants because we found out where all the colonies were and gave each one, you know, a little treat to take back to their colony and nuked the whole bunch, okay? But they work together, you know. We were out golfing a few years ago with Brother Wayne, and Brother Gord was there with Drew, and we were down south, and he went off in the woods, and he leaned against a tree. And what happened when he leaned against that tree? There was fire ants in that tree. And now there was no longer fire ants. They didn't all stay on that tree. They were biting the daylights out of Drew because he interfered with their nest, okay? And that's the soldier ants do. Like you get in there and they're there to defend it, all right? Now, I think the fire ants are pretty much all soldiers, but at any rate, they make a nasty bite. But that's what they do. There's the workers, you know, and they find a food source. One of them will find a food source, come back and say, come on, guys, I just found a hamburger over here by Wendy's. And they'll all go there and they march in a line and they work together, all right? Solomon's interest here was that they would look at the work ethic, all right? One thing we see here, it says, go to the ant, verse 6, go to the ant, thou sluggard, and consider her ways and be wise, okay? The ant is not forced to work. If someone has to be forced to work, then that's a problem. And the sluggard is one of those guys that's just, you got to push him to get him to work. And that's what Solomon is trying to tell. And apparently, it might be one of his sons that he's talking to here. He may have a lazy son, all right? And he goes on about that to him, all right? And verse number 8, okay, we see that they work without fail. It says, it provideth her meat in the summer and gathereth her food in the harvest. They just, there's a job that needs to be done, all right? And we've got to make hay while the sun shines and get the food there for the winter, and they just do that, all right? It's just automatic. It's inbred in them, okay? To do that work and to go and to do all that kind of thing, all right? We used to have when I worked at the fire hall, you would be allowed X number of sick days per month, okay? And you could bank the sick time. And there were some guys that said, well, why bother, you know, if I'm allowed this time off, I'm going to take this time off. And I'm there like, this is an insurance policy in case something happens and you get sick. Because how it worked there happened in a couple of cases where people had abused their sick time. You run out of sick time, you're done. You're fired, sorry, off to the next person, okay? And but some guys would, well, I only need so many of these days in the bank, you know, and then I'll just use them. It's the wrong attitude to have, like, you know, but it's just what they did, you know. But what ants do from blind instinct, people ought to do out of simple common sense. It's time to work. Is working part of God's curse from the sin? Let me ask you that. Is work part of the curse? Joe? No. How do you know that?
Because he had to work to dress the garden.
Mm-hmm. Before the sin. Before the fall. Martha?
It wasn't the work, it was the no longer enjoying the work. It was labor.
It was going to be harder. It was going to be harder. Now there's going to be more things there. There's going to be thorns and thistles and other stuff there. And all those wonderful weeds that Deborah likes to pull out so that her flowers grow. All right? But work itself, God gave Adam the job to name the animals. All right? Work is not part of the curse. All right? It's part of our who we are, what we're made to do. Okay? Doesn't mean we can't have some leisure time in there and play a game of golf and watch somebody lean up against a tree with fire ants or somebody drive their cart into a tree. All right. Okay, but it means that, that we need to work, okay? You need to have a work ethic, all right? And Solomon drew much of his wisdom out of watching nature and things in nature. He was a very wise man, and he would watch some things and learn many things. And we could learn some valuable lessons too if we were to just spend some time, rather than looking on a computer or looking on a tablet or doing whatever, but to spend some time looking at God's creation. What did God say after he created things? What did he say when he was all done? It's good. He admired his own work, that what he done. He did these things and it was good. Shouldn't we do the same? Even more so, just to understand a little bit more about God and how God's design is there. People think that evolution is true because, well, the monkey has 2 eyes and two ears and a nose and a mouth, so we must have came from that. You know what that tells me? It tells me that the monkey has a common creator that we do, and this is God's design. All right, and the way he designs many things, are similar because they got a common creator. Okay, now there's some things that are way out there. I mean, God's idea of variety is 10,000 kinds of ants, 20,000 kinds of bees. There's like 5,000 types of grass. Okay, God likes variety. Okay, but we need to take a closer look at what God's creation is. In 1 Corinthians chapter 11 and verse 14, there's a couple of verses here where he refers to just simply nature, okay? And I'm not going to get into great detail here, but in 1 Corinthians 11, 14, he says, "Doth not nature itself teach you that if a man have long hair, it is a shame unto him?" There's just some things that just naturally come, okay? But this is the real verse I want to look at. Romans chapter 1 in verse 20. It says, "For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse." You know what the Bible's telling us there? People are without excuse of knowing who God is because there's evidence all around us in his creation. He proves who he is by his creation, all right? Now, as we see here, we get back here to Proverbs chapter 6. Apparently, like I said, Solomon must have had a lazy son here. Maybe he was given too much. Maybe he felt that he was entitled to whatever he was going to have. I've heard of people before, they just kind of, well, I'll spend everything that I've got because it really doesn't matter. Once my parents die, I'll get all the money to cover all my debts. And that's the way they live. And that's just mind-blowing to me, all right? What's that?
Let their parents do their work.
Yeah, okay. And it's strange why people have different ideas as to why they don't have to work. But we're going to look at some of those things. Now, Ian, you can hand out those papers, and Greg's going to hand out some papers, and we've got a little handout for you this morning.
Oh, you need me now.
Not really. I can get somebody else to do it.
Never rewind.
Solomon, and as he speaks through the book of Proverbs, talks about many things, all right? And the whole book is essentially about godly wisdom. But he talks quite a bit about people that are lazy. He calls them slothful. He calls them sluggards. There's 17 different verses or 17 different times. There's 11 times the word slothful is found in there, and 6 times the word sluggard is found in there. And you may see one of my favorite my cartoon characters on the top there, and I'm going to teach the rest of the lesson talking like Sid the Sloth, all right? Okay, I'm not going to do that, but I love him there. He says, you know me, I'm too lazy to hold a grudge. I just busted up laughing when I heard that line there. But let's look at some of the characteristics of a lazy person, all right? The first one there is they love to sleep. They love to sleep. Let's look at those verses 9 to 11 there in Proverbs chapter 6. How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall thy poverty come as one that traveleth, and thy want as an armed man. Talks about them sleeping in another passage there. It says, and they just, it's work for them to sleep on the right side and then turn over to their left. This is like turning a door on a hinge, you know, and that's what they are. But one thing that lazy people like to do is spend time sleeping. The second one, they are more of a nuisance than they are a help. Let's look at Proverbs chapter 10 and verse 26. It tells us there, it says, as vinegar to the teeth and as smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to them that send him. It's like you got some guy to help trying to do a job, and they send you some lazy guy there, and really he's just gets in the way more than he gets to help. Have you ever had that experience? You know, and you're waiting to get something done, and your co-pilot's lazy, and have you checked this? Oh, no, not yet. I got to finish my donut. All right, or whatever, you know, and trying to get things done, and it's like you have to do everything twice because they're not there. Like it says there in verse number 26, as vinegar to your teeth is not going to kill you. But what's it going to be? It's going to be irritating, okay? I got to tell you this story, even though Lenore's in the room and she's going to shoot me afterwards. But she had a bunch of people over from the John Noble home when she worked there for a little Christmas get-together. And she wanted to have some apple cider and some nice hot apple cider as a drink. And the one lady she got a glass of this stuff, and she fired it back and like this. Lenore had accidentally bought cider vinegar. This lady told her, she said, I never had any phlegm for a month. All right? But you don't want to drink vinegar, okay? You know, the apple cider vinegar is awesome on French fries, okay? But not so much in a cup of it all at once and just kind of fire it back, you know? But and smoke in your eyes, trust me, I've had a lot of smoke in my eyes over the years, okay? It's not going to kill you, but it's just irritating, okay? And you know, there's some, I think it's Joshua, because he hates, or maybe it's Drew. He hates campfires because no matter where he sits, that's the direction the smoke goes. Okay, so wherever he sits down, sit on the opposite side, and you'll be safer on that campfire. But it's just there as an irritating, and that's the same here with a lazy person. They're more of a nuisance than they are a help. I'm sure, Joe, as a service manager, you'd hired some guys that were mechanics that were just duds. All right, they were duds. All right. They weren't shit the sloth, though, were they? Okay. A lot of times, these lazy people will have a know-it-all attitude. They sit back and do nothing, but they'll tell everybody else how it needs to be done. You ever run into a person like that? Let's look at Proverbs chapter 26 and verse 26. Is that the right verse? Yeah. I'm sorry?
Number 16.
Number 16? I typed in the wrong one. Over there? Right. Thank you. I typed the wrong one in my notes here. That's on my handout there. Okay. The sluggard is wiser in his own conceit than 7 men that can render reason. They just think they've got it. You know? And, well, you know what? I was born to be a leader. And I'll tell you what. What's that? Yes, like I'll sit down in my chair, I'll put on my white helmet, and I'll tell you folks how it needs to be done. Another thing about a sluggard or a sloth is they are really, really good at doing one thing. What's that? Making excuses. Really good at making excuses. Look at Proverbs chapter 20 and verse number 4. The sluggard will not plow by reason of the cold. Therefore shall he beg in harvest and have nothing. It is too cold to go outside. We were snowmobiling this week, and the one day it was actually too cold. It was minus 30, and that was if you're sitting still in the woods. If you're moving on the snowmobile, I don't know, it must have been like minus 45, and any kind of skin that was sticking out, we had to stop, or Seth's fingers were frozen. But here's the sluggard will not plow by reason of the cold. There's anything at all, any kind of excuse at all not to do work. Look at chapter 22 and verse 13. It says, "A slothful man saith, there is a lion without. I shall be slain in the streets." No, I can't go outside. There's, the boogeyman is out there, or whatever. Any kind of excuse they can come up with so that they don't have to do it. And they're masters at it, okay?
Excuse though, we need my lion.
All right. Now we get down to some really, really interesting ones here. What do you suppose they do with God-given resources? They waste them. They waste God-given resources. Look at chapter 18 and verse number 9. "He also that is slothful in his work is brother to him that is a great waster." Opportunities come. God gives us things that we can use, and they waste them. I've watched people that they. Well, I'm sure you've heard stories of people that have won the lottery, and a few years later, they're at McDonald's flipping hamburgers for minimum wage because their $10 million that they had is gone, because they just throw it all away. All right, now it's a life of leisure, and my friend needs a 57-inch TV, so I'll buy him one, and then whatever they do, and it's all gone, and they waste it. And we can waste resources that God gives. What kind of resources does God give us that we can use for Him? Sorry? Your time. How can you waste your time?
Watching TV or playing games.
Yeah. Is it wrong to play games? But if we, that's all we do. We're supposed to be working or flying an airplane. Oh, whoa, there's where I was supposed to land. Okay, but God gives us. He gives us time. He gives us talents. He gives us money. He gives us some skills that we have. Can we use those skills for God, or can we just kind of let them go by the wayside? People have abilities, and we just waste those resources rather than using them for God. Well, I've done enough, and I don't need to do any more. It's time for someone else to pick up, and that experience that someone has got from serving the Lord, we just waste that. All right? God-given opportunities. Wayne?
Along the same lines, when it comes to when it snows, the same person would say, God put it there, then take it away.
There you go. I'll just sit here till spring before I have to get out and do something, because the snow's there. All right? They also waste God-given opportunities. Look at Proverbs chapter 10 and verse 5. "He that gathereth in summer is a wise son. He that sleepeth in harvest is a son that causeth shame." God gives the opportunity there in the summer to bring in the food for the winter. Again, kind of like talking about what the ants do in Proverbs chapter 6. All right? And people waste those opportunities. You have an opportunity to tell someone about the Lord, and rather talk about a trade the Blue Jays made, rather than especially when the door has opened for the gospel. And we waste those opportunities. Or we waste opportunities with other Christians to encourage them or to help them. Or someone who is just maybe coming back to the Lord, or just got saved, and we waste opportunities to kind of take that person and serve God with that person. And say, look, why don't you help me with this, and teach them how to serve. Teach them the joy of serving the Lord.
With companionship of other believers.
Exactly. Like I preached a couple weeks ago about the body. It's so much. Talk to Sean right now with one arm in a sling and how much less he can do, less than half of what he could do before with one hand. The two hands together do a lot more than just double what one hand can do. All right? And it's the same with finding someone, you know, and helping them and showing them the joy in serving God. There is joy in serving God, you know, and we need to look at that. All right? I had someone approach me just a short while ago, and they says, well, you know, now that you're not doing as much as you did at the church, does that feel good? No. So, well, wasn't your plate too full? I want a full plate. You know, I want to serve God, and it's awkward. Okay, from what I did before to where I'm able to do now. It's you know, it's I gotta serve God. You know, any way I can, I gotta serve God. Like, just, and once in a while, it's nice to sit back and to, you know, throw a fishing line in the water and relax for a little bit. But, you know, after a few weeks, like, you can just, let me get back to doing what I've got to do. We're built to work. God created us to work. Not to make an excuse, there's a lion outside. Not to make an excuse, God will get rid of the snow when it's time to get rid of the snow. And then I'll go outside, you know. Get on your snowmobile, let's go, okay? But, you know, it's important that we do this. Now, you know, the question I want to look at just before we shut down here is, you know, are we ever like Sid the Sloth when it comes to serving God? When it comes to our Christian life? Do we, like it says in our number 2 there, they're more of a nuisance than a help. Do we get in the way more than we get in there and do the work? Because one person maybe doesn't have the skill that another person has. Do we complain about the person that doesn't have that amount of skill? Why is that person doing that job? Or do we wonder why, well, you know, why isn't somebody taking care of this? Maybe God's pointing that out to you, that there's a need there, because you need to be the one to get up and do that. Well, you know, that job is below me. You know, I'm got all kinds of skills. Then use those skills, all right? But do we get in the way? Do we complain about a job that we don't think is sufficient enough? You know, it is so important that we understand what God wants from us. And you know what He wants from you? He wants the same thing from you that He wants from me. He wants your best. Where that ranks as we would rank that means absolutely nothing. Okay? Means nothing of how I would rank the job that you are doing compared to where God wants your effort. God says this person's effort is out of 10 and this person's effort is out of 10. If you look at that where they had the talents, and you remember the one was given 5 and the one was given 2 and the one was given 1, and the guy that had 5, he made 5 more and he had 10. Well, that's good. You know, and the other guy, he went from 2 to 4. Or I can't remember exactly the numbers. And the other guy that had 1 just buried his. To the top 2 guys that weren't really even close, what Jesus says to them is word for word exactly the same. Read it in your Bibles. Word for word. You know why? Because God is more concerned with our effort than what we think we've accomplished. All right? What God wants us to accomplish is the very best that we can. All right? And we need to do that and not get in somebody else's way because they're not accomplishing what we think they should be able to accomplish. Let's get alongside them and help them. Let's get in there, you know? Are we like number 3 there? Do we step back and tell everyone else how it should be done rather than get in there and just do it ourselves? How about number 4? Do we have more? Here's another line of my dad's. You have more excuses than you can shake a stick at. Why you want to shake a stick at an excuse, I'm not quite sure, but that's what he would say. Another one of his lines was, an excuse is the skin of a reason stuffed with a lie. I think it was Greg that actually quoted that to me again the other day and reminded me of that. This is one of my lines that my dad had. An excuse is just the skin of a reason stuffed with a lie, all right? What kind of excuses? Or maybe even worse. we get down to number 5 and number 6. Do we waste God-given resources? May not think we're lazy, but when it comes to serving God, do we waste our God-given resources? The talents, the abilities that He has for us, the things that He has given us to use for Him, do we waste those? Or do we use them for God? Or do we waste God-given opportunities to serve? You see a need? I'm really big on this. If you see a need, there's a reason God showed you that need. All right? There's a reason. If you see a need, do we waste those things? Something for us to do here and step back like Solomon was telling his son, the sluggard, to step back and observe the ants. We need to step back and observe ourselves. Are we like said the sloth when it comes to serving God? When it comes to living a life that pleases God? What do we like? Consider the ants. Consider the ants. All right, let's pray. Precious Father, I thank you for your goodness, and Lord, I thank you